Hey guys, check out this video just dropped from Jubilee 25 verse 1 with Ben Shapiro debating an incredibly dishonest liberal once again and just absolutely putting him in place with facts, although the little liberal audience laughing alongside this guy makes him clearly think that he's won the debate, although he comes with absolutely no facts, just emotions and just lies. But let's get into it.
Good to meet you.
Kamala Harris supports the bipartisan border bill that was negotiated by conservative Senator James Lankford and supported by Mitch McConnell. Do you not support that bill? And
I do not support that bill.
So what is your solution then?
I mean, my solution is that this actually ought not be done in a comprehensive fashion. So I have a general critique of the way that we deal with immigration in the country. Instead of trying to solve all problems at once, which is very likely to end in nothing, what we ought to first do is we ought to close the border.
And but the border is closed right now. Do you agree?
The border is certainly not closed right now.
What do you mean? There's a small trickle of people coming over. The numbers are similar to the end of the Trump administration, no?
Well, now because of executive order, they have been reduced significantly, but...
Do you not agree that they're the same number as the end of the Trump administration?
Right now,
yes.
It is on a monthly basis, but
yes.
That's after letting in 6.5 million illegal immigrants.
So do you think Trump was failing then at the end of his administration?
I think that Donald Trump did a better job than Joe Biden. He certainly did not do a perfect job on illegal immigration.
So Joe Biden is matching what Donald Trump is doing right now. So you applaud Joe Biden?
After letting in 6.5 to 11 million illegal immigrants, I don't think you get to fill in that gap by doing like 4 months of good border policy.
Those are border encounters. We don't know how many of those people were turned away. We don't know how many of those people are still in this country. But those people make up a significant portion of our labor force as well, including in states like yours, Florida, where they make up like 5%.
So your argument is that it's not happening and it's good that it is.
It's not happening? What do you mean?
That the illegal immigration pool is not very large, and also it's good that it is large.
I'm saying you guys make up numbers all the time. It's like 20, 30 million.
No, that's from the Wall Street Journal. I'm not making up that number.
Well, Donald Trump said he wants to deport 20 million of these guys. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think that if we were going to look at deportations, we obviously ought to tranche that out based on criminal record. We ought to tranche it out based on usefulness to the economy. I think we ought to look at each person individually and determine whether they ought to be deported or not.
So that is probably going to lead to a small trickle of people being kicked out of here. So that's not going to accomplish your goal.
Well, I mean, who said that my goal was to mass deport 20 million people all at once?
So you want 20 million undocumented immigrants to stay in America?
No, no, that is not what I'm saying. I fail to see how you got from, I would like to go through one by one in the same way that we do IRS tax forms for literally every American who pays taxes in the United States and go through illegal immigrants and determine who ought to stay in the country and who not ought to stay in the country.
So what army is going to go over these 20 million people and with what resources? Where are you going to detain them? How are you going to get them out of the country?
I mean, you'll detain them and you'll deport them, increasing the resources of ICE. The biggest problem with regard to ICE,
similar to the bill that was rejected by you and...
Well, I mean, you're neglecting the part of the bill that allowed a baseline of 5,000 illegal immigrants border encounters before the executive branch automatically kicked in border enforcement. So I've been down to the border, okay? Like I went down to the border, and let me tell you what I saw at the border, and then we can go, okay? So
saw with your own eyes.
Not just saw with my own eyes, talked to the Border Patrol agents. Okay, the way that the Biden administration was treating the border for the vast majority of their term was to treat a claim of asylum without evidence as evidence that the person ought to be given asylum. So the first priority was for Border Patrol to be activated to go to places where Mexican drug cartels were leaving people at the border en masse, and then to process those people and let them into the country within 72 hours. The goal of this for the Mexican drug cartels was to clear large swaths of the border of Border Patrol agents specifically so that in those unoccupied areas, fentanyl and drugs could then be passed, human trafficking can then be passed in those unoccupied areas.
So you mentioned these cartels. You agree these cartels are profiting off human trafficking, right?
Of course.
So why don't we open up legal means for these people to come in here? Then they don't have to give the cartels money. They're making more money off human trafficking right now because of our immigration system doesn't allow more people. And the Republicans do not have a bill to allow more people to come here legally.
I mean, so your answer to illegal immigration is just magically legalize everyone.
No, it's to open up legal paths so these people don't have to leave their livelihood in these countries and carry a bag and walk through the jungle with their kids.
By the logic that you're using, we could make murder absolutely not a thing by simply pretending that murder is now legal.
What?
Your suggestion is that millions of illegal immigrants ought to just become legal immigrants, and then magically this would solve the entire problem.
We have failed these people. We have benefited tremendously off exploiting these people. You and I, we have benefited from these people working hard. They just want to be here and be a part of our country. I can't think of anything more American than that.
I'm not doubting the willingness of people to come to the country. I am doubting the incentive structure that draws people to the country with rich array of social benefits that didn't exist.
What is that incentive structure?
That incentive structure is things like Medicaid, things like free schooling.
Do you think someone's going to leave their home in Venezuela to come here and leech off our Medicaid? These people want to work. These people want to live, man.
Okay, then if they sign a contract saying they don't receive social benefits, they're more than welcome to stay.
Oh, Well, sadly, they would take benefits if they were available to them, if they could come out of the shadows, and they would actually pay more taxes and contribute more to society. Let me ask you, if there's
Oh. Passionate hands, no worries.
If there's an accident, and let's say your wife's in an accident, a car accident, the only person that witnessed it is an undocumented immigrant, they're not coming forward to be a witness, Ben. Doesn't that trouble you?
This is the reason that I should allow millions and millions of illegal immigrants into the country, is on the off chance that they might be a witness?
It's one reason that these people are being treated as second-class citizens, even though they benefit you and I.
Can I ask a question? What is your standard for whether someone should be allowed into the country?
My standard?
Yes.
What do you mean my standard? Like as far as their education or their ability?
Yes. You're creating immigration policy. Who should be allowed into the country?
I think we should allow a wide variety of people. This country, not everybody starts out as a doctor, Ben. Some people start out doing menial tasks.
So everyone. So you have no limits. How about numbers? Do you have any number limit? No numerical limit.
20,000 people die or retire in this country a day. There's only 10,000 births. We need more people.
I agree. That's why we should all have more babies.
So, okay, well, guess what? People aren't going to have them because you're not incentivizing it. Kamala Harris is with her things like $6,000 child tax credit. Meanwhile, you guys are just trying to cause more problems and make it harder for people to raise families.
Okay, as a person with 4 children, I can promise you I have a very, very strong incentive structure in allowing people to have more kids and incentivizing people to have more kids. I wish that government benefits were more effective in doing this. They simply have not been in particular areas of Europe. There's a different argument than the illegal immigration argument. When we're talking about illegal immigration, you seem to be making an argument there ought to be no baseline standard for who gets in and no baseline cap for how many people get in.
I'm not saying that. We can come up with a figure. We can come up with numbers. So I'm not a lawmaker. That's what we elect people to go do and work out those figures. But Republicans are just fighting everything.
I need some standard.
You need me to come up with a number.
No. Okay, a number or a characteristic or some sort of standard for who you would let into the country. Because right now, all I'm hearing is you just want lots of people to come into the country without any standard and any cap on the number.
No, not at all. I want people to come here who want to work, who want to be a part of this country, and we all benefit from that. Okay, do you think you're not benefiting from these undocumented people? Who do you think is going to build the houses that we need with our shortage?
So do you think the people who come into the country should be eligible for all social benefits?
If they're contributing and they're allowed to contribute fully, right now they're not. They're using other people's social security numbers to pay social security tax and Medicare, and they're not able to get those benefits in the long run.
So again, I'm wondering how you're balancing the cost benefit to the American body politic if what you're suggesting is that day one you arrive in the country and now you're eligible for all social benefits.
I'm not saying day one
with
you're
no
eligible
education,
to all social
low wage
benefits.
labor.
Well, we can work all these details out. You're fighting over the
that's the core of the argument.
Really, you're upset that somebody who comes to this country and works hard and makes your life better and cheaper is going to get Social Security 40 years from now?
No, not Social Security 40 years from now. Medicaid today.
So wouldn't you rather than get Medicaid and get preventative care than go to the hospital where it costs you, the taxpayer, 10 times more money?
My point, as it has been from the beginning, is that you need screening procedures for immigration.
So you're saying Border Patrol is failing then to screen these people properly? Is that the accusation you're making?
I'm making the case that Border Patrol certainly is failing.
How do you know because you talked to a couple Border Patrol agents? You know, that is so insulting to our Border Patrol who's fighting every day on the front lines. You think they're not screening these people and they're being bamboozled by some people claiming asylum and tricking them?
No, because literally today, the FBI announced that an Afghan national was let in without vetting and tried to plan a terrorist attack on election day. Oh, it's just one. So
one guy. You know how many terrorists were caught by the border under Trump?
There are over 3.
Zero.
There are over 3.
At least we're catching them.
There are over 3. First of all, it's not true because a huge number of people, we don't know who they are coming across the border between ports of entry. Second of all, you're talking in this country right now at least 300,000 minors. We have no idea where they are.
That is nonsense. That is not nonsense. No, it is. It is. ICE has lost track of them because it's voluntary for them to keep in touch with the system. They are not lost. They're released to their sponsors who have to go through background checks. You have no idea what you're talking about.
They don't.
You think 300,000 minors are lost in America? Are you crazy?
I'm saying that. I'm not saying that. The Department of Justice is saying that.
Next thing you're going to tell me there's 19,000 murderers, right? Is that the next talking point?
No, that is not the next talking point.
Okay.
But you're going to have to explain to me why it is okay for literally tens of thousands of minors to be checked out to majors, to people who are above majority age, and then for the government to not, when I say lose track, I don't mean minors
checked out to their sponsor who goes through a background check. Is that what you mean?
They do not go through.
How do you know that?
Because they're not checking in. A huge number of people.
Oh, it's voluntary. Why does our law allow for it to be voluntary then if it's not working?
The law should not allow for it to be voluntary.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, in some cases, it is not voluntary. And in fact, human trafficking is going on at scale.
It sounds like you're upset when the problem doesn't exist. What is this problem?
Why are you okay with minors who are being checked out to people of majority age who then don't check in with the government? Is that okay with you?
I'm okay with minors being checked out to their sponsors who go through background checks who are usually family members, people that know them. You think it's just some random... You think I can go pick up a undocumented immigrant child right now?
No, but I do know that has happened to tens of thousands of kids in this country.
Oh, really? So you think they're just being released to random people?
They're being released to people who claim that they are relatives, and in many cases, they are not necessarily relatives.
How do you know that?
Because they are not checking in for their follow-up appointments.
Oh, because they're not checking in for the voluntary follow-up appointments. So you're assuming the worst. You're assuming they're probably being kidnapped and trafficked at this point.
I'm happy for you that you're assuming the best as to what happens with minor children.
I'm always going to assume the best about my fellow Americans. And of course, if these people are their sponsors and their background checks by these agencies, I'm going to assume the best. Unlike you, that's a weird thing to assume all this weird stuff.
No, actually, what's kind of weird to me is that you assume that anybody who picks up a kid without proper verification and background check doesn't check in for months at a time.
Proper verification and background check?
What do you know about the parents? What do you know about the people who are picking them up? What do you know about the cousins?
I've read that these people go through background checks and they are sponsors, usually family members. You don't sound like you read anything about this. You just have some fantasy you made up about me being able to go pick up an undocumented child. Why don't you and I go try to get one later? We'll see what happens.
I have a question. Where are you possibly coming up with that since I've actually said the opposite?
You want me to name the article? You can go Google it yourself. Maybe you'll learn something.
Which article specifically are you talking about?
Ben, when you get home, go on Google and type in how are undocumented migrants' children released and what is the process. You'll read all about it.
I can read all about it, and one of the things that I've read is that the immigration services in this country have not done proper follow-up.
Well, you read it on Gateway Pundit or
No,
what?
on Wall Street Journal, at the Department of Justice, in all of the legal claims by the federal government. Yes, this is in the New York Times. Okay,
So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. 300,000 children are being exploited in America right now.
That is not the claim.
Okay,
the claim is that the federal government does not know where they are.
Oh,
that is the claim, and that is absolutely valid. Do you know where they are? Do you think the federal government knows where all of them are?
The federal government should be tracking
everybody? I have a question. I think that the federal government has a responsibility to release children who come across the border only to people for whom there is follow-up available. Yes, and I find it very bizarre that you're totally fine with people signing off on handing over children to people who merely claim to be relatives without any follow-up whatsoever.
Why do you say merely claim? You don't know what that background check is like.
Because usually you should have evidence that that is in fact the case.
How do you know it's not?
Why is the assumption that it is?
Your claim is that people are taking out kids like library books and not providing the proper identification and background information.
Your lack of concern about what happens to those kids when proper verification and follow-up is not done seems disquieting to me.
Because you guys create fantasy scenarios where things that aren't happening. Are there cases where some children are going to be exploited? Of course. There's tons of people in this country.
So
we're the third largest country in the world.
So what should we do to stop that?
Well, you sound very passionate about this. Maybe you should write your Congress member and say we should tighten up these laws and make it mandatory instead of voluntary.
In order to do that, one of the things you might want to do, close the border.
The border is closed, Ben.
No, it is certainly not.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It is certainly not closed.
Do you think the border was closed under Trump?
No, I don't think it was fully closed under Trump.
Oh, so you say Trump failed at closing the border?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Donald Trump should have done more to close the border.
Why would you want him back in there if he's going to fail again?
Because he did a better job than Joe Biden, who let in 6.5 million illegal immigrants.
Joe Biden has the exact same border encounters right now as Trump at the end of his administration.
I have a question.
If Trump was on pace to let in 900,000, if that was the case, a year.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Why is it that after a president allows in, through pure executive order negligence, having walked back the executive orders that created the policies that you're now praying, I mean, if you want to call it purposeful, call it purposeful. On day one, they reneged on Remain in Mexico. They changed the standards by which asylum was claimed.
Mexico's got to play. It takes two to tango. Mexico didn't want anything to do with Remain in Mexico.
Remain in Mexico was the American policy. It was Joe Biden who walked out on Remain in Mexico.
There's also a small number of people. It's like a couple tens of thousands of people.
The unprecedented level of illegal immigration is apparently totally fine with you under Joe Biden.
No, listen, we need more people in this country, Ben. There's no legal means for them to come in that are reasonable. So these people are forced to come in through the southern border because there's no other way.
There are hundreds of thousands of people who come into this country every year legally on visas.
Yes, and that process is difficult. We need a lot more people than hundreds of thousands.
So you're making a case for broadening legal immigration,
yes,
but you are not setting any standard or numbers by which we are supposed to adjudicate whether this is good or bad.
That's not my job. All I know is it's too difficult right now.
So you're not making an argument at all. You're making an argument that basically we should just legalize everybody who wants to come into the country.
Not at all. I'm fine with the number.
Hold on. You have not set a number. You have not set a standard. You have suggested you're utterly fine with what happens to minors if they are released to adults without proper evidence.
I have not.
You have suggested that there is no major problem with exploitation of children being trafficked over the border.
I'll go with Trump's number, 1 million a year, because that's what he was on pace to let in by the end of his administration. 75,000 a month equals 900,000.
That's right. Thank you.